I've long been a fan of Graham Hancock, and whilst I cannot claim as illustrious a career, there are some strange similarities between his life and my own. I think it was through Graham that I first became acquainted with Hermes Trismegistus. That was probably when I first heard him read the Lament of Hermes. Darkness will be preferred to light, and death will be thought more profitable than life. No one will raise his eyes to heaven. The pious will be deemed insane, and the impious wise. The madman will be thought a brave man, and the wicked will be esteemed as good. As to the soul, and the belief that it is immortal by nature, or may hope to attain immortality, as I have taught you, all this they will mock at, and will even persuade themselves that it is false. No word of reverence or piety, no utterance worthy of heaven and of the gods of heaven will be heard or believed. And in that day men will be weary of life, and will cease to think of the universe worthy of reverent wonder and worship. And just as I admired Graham, I became devoted to Hermes, to devouring more and more of his work. Indeed, when I first began my quest to explain the paranormal, and what my wife and I were experiencing, I was convinced that Hermes provided the answers. Believing, as Graham does, that the ancients held the key to knowledge we had long since abandoned. That there was indeed meaning to life and the universe, and that it might be found in the knowledge of the ancients. Or maybe my hunch was correct, but there are so many diversions and distractions along the way. You see, Hermes gives his name to Hermeticism, a secret or occult, which means hidden knowledge. He is said to have trained so many of the ancient thinkers in his mystery schools. Well, the knowledge I sought was certainly secret. I taught for many years in some of the best universities around the world. And after full-time academia, I started knowledge-based companies using the internet. But the events that had overtaken my wife and I could not be readily explained by anything I knew of. I knew that my uncle had been very important in the Liverpool Freemasons, and that in some way Hermes was connected. Was this the unconscious which kept pushing me towards Hermes? Initially, I came across As Above, So Below, and a subscriber, Salahin, pointed me to the edition As Within, So Without. But my research suggested that even if the original phrase could be attributed to Hermes, the provenance of this edition was more opaque. Maybe it originates with Madame Helena Blavatsky, the founder of Theosophy, which might explain the links to the New Age, and therefore the mystery of its true origins. You see, as a researcher, I'm mistrustful of such academic imprecision, although do seem to share a common foundation with the New Age. Then, like so many who trod this path before me, I came across the Kabbalion, claiming to be written by the three initiates and to contain the knowledge of Hermes. I devoured the Kabbalion, believing it to contain the knowledge which was proving so elusive to me. It describes the laws of the universe. The principle of mentalism, all is mind, the universe is mental. The principle of correspondence, which includes as above, so below. The principle of vibration, nothing rests, everything moves. The principle of duality, everything has poles. The principle of rhythm, everything flows like a tide. The principle of cause and effect, every cause has an effect. And the principle of gender, everything has a male and a female. These seem to be the key to understanding the world, and maybe to fighting the black magic my wife and I were so obviously victims of. But ultimately it was hollow. More collection of key phrases and principles which inform the New Age, and the charlatan gurus who use it as a mechanism for taking money from others. Worse still, I discovered the three initiatives to be William Walter Atkinson. Maybe charlatan is too harsh a description, but he was an entrepreneur, using the name of Hermes to sell his prolific publications. A little too prolific to be scholarly. Now, I was aware of the Emerald Tablet, and surely this had some claim to be authentically the word of Hermes Trismegistus. Fortunately, I'd already done some research on the Emerald Tablet, so when I came across the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, the Atlantean, I knew to be wary, not least due to its size. They claim that Thoth was an Atlantean priest who came to Egypt and built the Great Pyramid, that he was revered as a god in Egypt, and that his knowledge had passed through the Egyptian priests and finally to Hermes Trismegistus. In fact, there is also a story that these Egyptian priests then took their knowledge to Mexico and South America. Now, this platform abounds with vlogs which repeat the myths of the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, generally uncritically. As always, I'm drawn into correcting them, and as always my contribution is never acknowledged. The Emerald Tablets of Thoth, the Atlantean, was actually written by the American former Theosophist Maurice Doreal. He claims to have found several emerald tablets in Giza, Egypt, which he translated. But in truth, Maurice was something of a fantasist, claiming to have had revelations in Denver and Los Angeles, including being taken to a cave below Mount Shasta by two Atlanteans, seemingly intent on converting the public to his views on aliens, an underground serpent race, and ascended gods through his Brotherhood of the White Temple. Such beliefs are uncannily similar to those of Schufeld's lizard people, also said to live below Los Angeles. Indeed, Maurice suggested that frozen serpents in Siberia would overthrow the communists in the Soviet Union. He also predicted nuclear war in 1953. Since his publication, there have been many others using the same title, and while some attempt to present the chronology and the antecedents, including one by Vietnam veteran and biblical scholar Bart Marshall, Nevertheless, few tell us much about the true origins of the emerald tablet itself. A further myth concerning the emerald tablet is that it was also contained within the Ark of the Covenant. Despite the claims, no known copies of the Greek emerald tablet exist, and certainly none are carved in emerald or green stones. The earliest examples are all from the Arab world. Kitab Sirr al-Asar is believed to have been written in 800, although an earlier version may have been written around 650. This is known as Kitab al-Hakim Fil al. Belinus is thought to be a Aleponus of Tyana, although there's little evidence to connect him with this work. Kitab al-Ustuqus, al-Uss, al-Thani is supposedly written by Jibir ibn Hayyan, and this contains the text. Jibir's translation begins with a reference to Belinus and then follows truth, certainty, that which is in no doubt, that which is above and that which is below, and that which is below is from which is above, working the miracles of one, and things were made from one. Its father is the sun, and its mother the moon. The earth carried it in her belly, and the wind nourished it in her belly. As the earth, which shall become fire, feed the earth from which is subtle, with the greatest power. It ascends from the earth to heaven, and becomes ruler over that which is above, and that which is below. And I've already explained the meaning of the whole of this in 2 of these books of mine. In Latin, the emerald tablets is known as tabula Samoginda. It was first translated by Hugo Santala in the 12th century, and during the medieval period many Latin translations followed, the most popular being known as the Vulgate. This highlighted the text's popularity amongst alchemists, believing it to hold the key to transmuting lead to gold, that it refers to the processes of calcination, dissolution, separation, conjunction, fermentation, distillation, and coagulation. However, to interpret it as being such transmutation takes an act of great interpretation, believing it to contain a deck or code words for chemical elements, especially as the text clearly refers to personal alchemy, that is, personal transformation. Indeed, it's this personal alchemy that I found so inspiring, but which is so misunderstood, and which only adds to its occult nature. Its popularity therefore persisted. Devotees include Sir Roger Bacon and Henry Cornelius Agrippa. My hero Sir John Dee was said to have a copy, which he treasured, and Sir Isaac Newton contributed his own translation. Aleister Crowley's Book of Thoth may have been inspired by Thoth, but adds little to our understanding. But his secretary, Idris Shah, most certainly does. I'm a great admirer of Idris Shah, who popularised Sufism in the UK during the 1960s. And his translation is the truth, certainty, truest without untruth. What is above is like what is below. What is below is like what is above. The miracle of unity to be obtained. Everything is formed from the contemplation of unity, and all things come from unity by means of adaptation. Its parents are the sun and the moon. It was born by the wind and nurtured by the earth. Every wonder is from it, and its power is complete. Throw it upon earth, and earth will separate from fire. The impalpable separates from the palpable. Through wisdom it rises from the world to heaven. This then descends to the world, combining the power of the upper and the lower. Thus you will have the illumination of all of the world, and darkness will disappear. That is the power of all strength. It overcomes that which is delicate and penetrates through solids. This was the means of the creation of the world, and the future wonderful developments will be made, and this is the way. I am Hermes, threefold sage, so named because I hold three elements of all wisdom. And thus ends the revelation of the work of the sun. So did Hermes Trismegistus actually exist? Well, maybe. It would seem likely that the Egyptians did revere a god known as Thoth, part human with the head of an ibis, or sometimes a baboon. He was the moon god and so is associated with the unconscious. His possible origins are elsewhere, such as Babylon. With the Greek conquest of Egypt, they merged their god Hermes with the Egyptian god Thoth, calling the new god Hermes Trismegistus, or thrice great. A common process in Greek and Roman history. Hermes is seen as the winged messenger, often depicted with winged sandals and winged helmet, a god who mediates between the world and the underworld. There is also a claim that Thoth was Seth, the third son of Adam and Eve. Also, there appears to be much written under the name Hermes Trismegistus. These are collectively known as the Corpus Hermetica, which includes the Lament of Hermes and supposedly the Emerald Tablet. But could these simply have been pen names for Hellenic interpretations of Egyptian wisdom, developed in the cultural melting pot of Alexandria? Such use of a pen name being common at the time and continuing into medieval times. Whilst the destruction of the Library of Alexandria might be part apocryphal, and one that I have repeated, it is possible that so much was lost in Alexandria. But then again, so much was found with the Muslim conquest of Alexandria, often finding its way to the House of Wisdom in Baghdad, translated by al-Kindi and his colleagues. Indeed, within Islam, Hermes Trismegistus is often believed to be the prophet Idris. But simply because so much is unsubstantiated does not mean that we should reject this ancient wisdom, or at least that which appears to be authentically ancient. Nor can we completely dismiss the myths. After all, it was Plato who mentions Atlantis, as indeed does Hermes Trismegistus. And his dating of Atlantis' destruction by flooding is uncannily close to the massive rise in sea levels. Religious scholars will point to similar stories of the Great Flood and point to new scientific evidence which appears to confirm it. Whilst Graham Hancock does appear to have discovered evidence of ancient and seemingly sophisticated civilizations from prehistory. I do remain sceptical of so much that is purported to be about the life and works of Hermes Trismegistus, and I am concerned that so many myths are reported as facts. Please read them if they entertain you. As a child I loved Rider Haggard's King Solomon's Mines, and as a young adult George Cockcroft, writing under the pen name Luke Reinhardt's The Dice Man. And now I have to admit I've never read Dan Brown's The Da Vinci Code, nor am I likely to. But if that's your bag, then by all means read it. I remain fascinated by Hermes Trismegistus, and I do believe his work to have been a major influence on Neoplatonism, or at least to be a part of Neoplatonism, and therefore the Sufi tradition, including naturally Idris Shah. It is from this that I'm beginning to piece together the meaning of life and the universe. But it's not for me to impose my beliefs upon you. However, I will always attempt to expose fabrication and at least explain the myth as best I can.